If you were in their shoes and that was your goal, what could you do?
Well, I think what you could do is a really good tax reform. I'm not talking massive tax cuts, but tax reform that lowers marginal tax rates, that broadens the tax base and abolishes a lot of the loopholes. A tax reform that brings a lot of the money that US corporations park abroad back. So I think that is probably the best that a government can do to raise potential growth. Deregulation, thoughtful deregulation is also makes sense. So this is something the administration wants to do. But I think we have to be aware that it takes a long time for these measures to affect potential growth. And actually, there is not that much that governments can do to affect trend growth, because in the end, a large part of that is determined by demographics and again, by productivity. And there's very little that we know, that economists and governments know, about how to revive productivity growth.
Joachim, is there anything they could announce today that could make yourself and the guys at Pimco rethink their forecast for growth next year?
Well, I think if they really want to do a large tax cut, not only tax reform, but a tax cut that actually raises the deficit a lot, then I think this could lead to stronger growth. Temporarily stronger growth, but the problem is the Fed would probably react by hiking interest rates by more, and the dollar would probably also appreciate. So I think it's very difficult to get stronger growth for longer. And then don't forget, even if the announcement today is for a large tax cut, and we heard Mnuchin saying earlier today that this would be the biggest tax cut and the biggest tax reform in US history, all of this will still have to go through Congress, and it's very difficult to do a major tax reduction that is not that is not revenue neutral in the current political circumstances. So we may get a big announcement today, but and they will talk the talk. They're talking a good talk on tax reform, but they still have to walk the walk. And I think there's a big question mark over whether they will be really able to push through the reform that they are talking about.
Well, Joachim, as David has said this morning alone, typically you go into a process like this and you underpromise and you overdeliver. As you sit around with the portfolio managers at Pimco, do you sense that the path of travel, so to speak, could be one of overpromising and underdelivering?
Yeah, I think this is pretty much what we've seen so far in the first almost 100 days of this administration. The administration hasn't actually done a lot of things, but I would argue that's maybe a good thing. You know, sometimes no policy action is better than a lot of policy action. For example, Trump could have done a lot of bad things on the trade front. He could have started a trade war. He could have slapped broad-based tariffs on imports from China and Mexico. He hasn't done that, and that's good news. He's more interested in trade deals rather than starting trade wars. And also, again, on taxes, I mean, we could have seen more action on the tax front already, but we are in a stage of the cycle in the US where we don't really need a big fiscal boost. Again, this would push up the dollar. It would lead to more aggressive rate hikes, and it could actually produce overheating and then a recession later on. So again, sometimes no action or little action is actually better for markets than a lot of action.